Ostap Yednak. He is the advisor to the CEO of the Ukrainian State Defense Manufacturing Conglomerate, former Ukrainian Forces officer, former director of the Reform Support Team at the Ministry of Environment, and member of the Parliament of Ukraine from 2014 to 2019. Ostap will be providing a general update on the state of the Ukraine war and giving us information regarding some opportunities in the future regarding investments to aid with the Ukrainian reconstruction effort. So, Ostap, why don't you kind of give us an update? We've been reading and what's going on. I have the Wall Street Journal in front of us and watching the news. And please give us an update from your side. And thank you for all you're doing. Yeah, he's in Ukraine. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide you with some input. The situation in Ukraine is currently quite contrasting. From one side, we have Russian missiles bombing our cities. 2 days ago, one missile exploded like 100 meters away from my apartment. And yesterday, there was a big tragedy with a lot of civilians died. But at the same time, today we have the president of Indonesia in Ukraine, and we have Richard Branson also visiting us and discussing opportunities. So the situation in the front line is much better than it has been several weeks ago. We are receiving longer range artillery, and we are now trying to change negative trend and trying to squeeze Russians out of already occupied territories. Personally, I was in the front line 4 weeks ago in the army, in the infantry, and I personally experienced their artillery. So right now it's much more better. And at Ukroboronprom, we are also trying and supplying with weapons Ukrainian army, and we are trying to do our best to enforce our defense forces. That's brief information about the situation with the war, and we expect that in the coming months, when we receive more foreign military aid, we will have Russians leaving our territory and getting our territories back. That's very brief information about military situation. About our company, our group of companies. Before the war, Ukroboronprom has been close to top 10 exporter of the weaponry around the globe. We had exports value of over $1 billion per year. Almost half of it was high precision weapons and ammunition. Quarter of this export has been aircraft industry and repair, and the rest was armored vehicles, shipbuilding and naval engineering, radar and communications, and special instrumentation, etc. So it was very high value, sophisticated products, and Ukroboronprom is a group of companies with around 100 companies producing aircrafts, naval shipbuilding, weaponry, etc. We are undertaking right now a transformation at Ukroboronprom, and we are within next months we will become OECD governed, accountable and open company, and we will be welcoming investments and doing joint ventures with all over the world with our allies. So it will be like a great potential for cooperation and for investments. Regarding economic situation in Ukraine and financial needs, right now our monthly budget shortage is around $5 billion per month, which we are receiving as international assistance, because our inflation is for last 4 months has been up by 17%. So economically we are very vulnerable right now. Within next months, and the estimates of European Investment Bank, and it was today confirmed by the President of Ukraine, that overall need for investment to recover after the warfare would be around $1 trillion. EIB says that it should be $1.1 trillion. What it means? It means that for the upcoming decade, we will be recovering our industry. Before the war, it was in a pretty rough shape. It was mainly heavy industry with outdated technologies from the last century, extremely environmentally pollutant. Majority of our heavy industry in the east of Ukraine is already ruined, destroyed by Russian military. It means that we will be recovering and reconstructing all our heavy industry. Power generation. Over half of our electricity generation comes from nuclear power plants, which are Soviet made and Soviet built and also outdated. We have become a part of European energy network, NSOE, electricity network grid, and we are right now actually exporting our electricity to the European market because of excess of production, because of decrease of the industry. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
So in the coming, and the rest, there was also coal power generation, also from the Soviet era and extremely environmentally polluted. It means for the next decade, we will be switching to decentralized grid with a smaller power, sustainable, renewable solar, wind, and hydroelectric power generation, and complete renovation of our grid, electric grid system, which has potential of multi-billion-dollar investments. And the same relates to the port infrastructure, road infrastructure, railway infrastructure, everything. There has been already damage to our infrastructure, direct damage of over $100 billion, according to the estimates of our Ministry of Infrastructure. So there are huge potential for innovation and investments. In terms of governance, it has been a big concern, and probably the biggest concern before the war by the investors. Last week, Ukraine acquired candidacy status to the European Union. And basically this week we are getting commitments on the reforms agenda, which means that we will adopt our legislation to European standards in judiciary and law enforcement, in accountability and transparency, in the economic regulation, customs regulation, environmental rules, and so on. So it's probably one of the best drivers of improvement in the governance in our country. Additionally, actually next week, Ukrainian government will present in Switzerland, in Lugano, economic recovery plan, and it will be, there are already rough negotiations, but it will be conditional, means Ukraine will be receiving money against reforms agenda. So we will present our vision of reconstruction and innovation, our vision of development. Instead, the world and our allies will say what we have to do in terms of improvements in governance in order to not to have corruption, malfunctioning of governance, excessive bureaucracy, and problems with the rule of law, which we used to be having for the last years. So it means that we are entering, so the war in Ukraine, there is a lot of suffering, a lot of casualties, but it unlocks also a unique chance for our country to rebuild from scratch and to become completely different in terms of infrastructure, in terms of investment, and also in terms of governance. So this is like a brief overview of what is going on in the country. I'm very grateful to all our allies from all over the world for the help and assistance. And I'm ready to answer your questions, and we can continue also in the upcoming weeks and months with regular updates on what is going on and unlocking the potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I'll start a quick question. It seems like, you know, we're sitting here in Midtown, New York. And from what we read in the paper and you see in the news, it seems like the war is focused on the eastern section, areas that I've never heard of, called Donbass and others. Anything, is that accurate, I guess, and any effects, I guess, as you go more western? Particularly one of the areas that's concerned from an industry standpoint is, I've learned through this that Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe and part of the world as far as from the wheat. So has that been adversely affected by all the bombings and the indiscriminate missile attacks and so on?
Right now, 95% probably of our grain export, or close to 100% of the grain export from Ukraine was going from southern ports of the Black Sea, Odessa port and Mykolaiv port. They are blocked by Russian Navy and mines, and we cannot do exports. It means that around 20 million tons of grain is already locked in the facilities, port facilities. And there has been a lot of investments also in the port infrastructure and grain exporting infrastructure from Cargill and Dreyfus and all the top international companies. Right now, we are looking and trying to have alternative routes of exports through railway, through Romania, Poland, etc. But it cannot go forever. And in coming months, there will be some solution of this. The bombing and missiles that Russia is launching right now, sporadically and randomly throughout the country, is targeting military infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, and also logistical routes of grain exports, as well as military aid supplies. So, but you know, the precision of their missiles is so poor that they are mainly attacking civilian infrastructure, causing enormous casualties. So, but western part of Ukraine is less affected than eastern part of Ukraine. And many businesses have been reallocated from eastern part of Ukraine to western part of Ukraine. We are about, in the coming months, to receive anti-air systems so that we will get more protected from missiles from Russia. And in the coming months, we have to fix this problem because it's about our survival, and we should have more facilities to intercept their missiles. Thank you.
Okay, great. John, you have a question?
Yeah, in the case
You have
of
to
your
speak up, John.
candidacy for the for NATO, is there still a objection coming from Turkey, you know, in regard to the candidacy? And how do you overcome that if it's still there?
Regarding candidacy of Sweden and Finland, you mean, from Turkey?
Yeah. So I know there's a front page story in the Wall Street Journal today that I guess Turkey dropped its objection to Finland and Sweden from entering NATO. I think John's question was with respect to Ukraine, but it's really,
Or the
yeah. But that's not on the table right now, I guess. But it's good news that for Finland and Sweden.
Just before
Turkey's not part of the EU.
No.
Turkey's not part of the EU.
No. God, income growth. Take down your
Any other questions, Blake?
Yep. More
So
questions.
assuming then, if Western and supplies of arms, long range missiles, anti-missile defenses, you were able to take back Donetsk and Donbas areas, and even if you were to take back Mariupol and Crimea, what do you think the Russian position would be on a ongoing basis to that situation? Do you think that they would accept it, or would this be a much more prolonged situation? Even though you would be regaining your territory, they would still be threatening further action to regain it again.
It's a very important question. Yes, with more military supply from our allies, we will return control over Donetsk and Lugansk, over eastern part of Ukraine, and also southern part of Ukraine, which is occupied, including Crimea. It will be, with Crimea, it will be a little bit more complicated, but we are looking into this as well. So all control of our territories, we are about to get back through this warfare, and it is our right, because we have unprovoked aggression. And it's also a challenge of the rest of the world, how to deal with Russia after this aggression. And we are also looking even more ambitiously, and there are also a lot of discussions how to make Russia less aggressive, more democratic, more civilized, right? How to make it less imperialistic and to decolonize Russia and make it federation as it should be. But it's a separate topic for discussion. So we are ambitious to get back our territories and to bring them back to life in the nearest future.
OSTAT, Marty Sakata. So I have a question. So any thoughts on, have you guys calculated the amount of infrastructure damage that you suffered, and you know, what's the viable plan to get back to some, you know, modicum of infrastructure which could service your exports?
First of all, we need to unlock our ports in the Black Sea, Odessa and Mykolaiv. This is the challenge which we are already trying to resolve, having longer range missiles. And we are working through alternative routes through Romania, Poland, and other countries. So this is technical issue, but we have port infrastructure, advanced port infrastructure in the southern part of Ukraine, which is under Ukrainian control right now, but the sea roads are blocked by Russia. So this is something we need to resolve.
You know, I mean, have you guys calculated damage to roadways and bridges and trains? Have you calculated like a billion, 20 billion, 10 billion?
Around 100.
Well, my question is, how much has been damaged, and then what's it going to cost just to get back to sustainability of trade? Any thoughts? Because the number is always a good thing to know.
The estimates from the Ministry of Infrastructure are around 100 billion US dollars current damage, but it includes mainly eastern part of Ukraine and the industry and the bridges and the roads, so like hard infrastructure. We still have port infrastructure functional in the southern part of Ukraine, where we can proceed with the exports of grains. Some of it is damaged, but not critical damage so far.
And you've also said that there's routes through Poland and other countries. Any estimate on that expense just to get there? Any thoughts? If you were to reroute through Poland, if you were to reroute these exports through Poland and other countries, what's that cost going to be? Do you know?
I think they're doing it now. Yeah.
We are doing it now. It's not a
Yeah.
problem with costs. It's a problem with capacity, because exporting 20 million tons of grains through railway through Poland, and our railway system is different from European. Our tracks are wider. It means that we have to reload the grain. It's also a challenge for us to merge our infrastructure with Europe, and it will also require a lot of investments in the future. But right now, it's not the cost issue, it's the capacity issue.
Well, okay, and I think we have one more question here.
Yeah, I just,
Like-
I know it's incredibly early in this whole discussion, but have you had other discussions with large infrastructure groups, or have you kind of heard percolations of like Brookfield or Allianz or some of these large BlackRock infrastructure companies or private equity companies? You hear their names floating around Ukraine?
I cannot tell you right now because we need guys from the Ministry of Infrastructure to be invited to the discussion. They can provide you with
Okay.
input. We can arrange a separate panel on infrastructure recovery and invite experts who are drafting these strategies and can provide you with more details. No problem.
Well, Ostap, we want to thank you very much. Kind of bring a human face to it and a very current update on what's going on. We only wish the Ukrainian people peace and safety going forward. And maybe in the future we could have another update, because I used to be in the United States Navy. I didn't appreciate the port challenges as well as you described them. But most of all, be safe and continue the good fight.
Thank you very much.
Great to hear from you, Ostap. Thanks so much.